Hello, my name is Marin Dwyer, and 2 weeks ago, I watched my parents bury a box beside my sister's grave. In the middle of the night, without saying a single word, I dug it up with my bare hands. I was shaking. Inside was something I thought had died with her. My whole life, I was told she was unstable, that she hurt someone. But the only one who destroyed anything was the man I once called Dad. They told me she died to protect the family name. But what if the name itself was the sickness? What if I was the next lie they planned to bury? Now I know the truth. But the question is, will I survive it? The night air in Savannah was sharp enough to sting my lungs. Winter there doesn't come with snow, just that damp, bone-deep chill that seeps into everything. The cemetery sat on the edge of town, past the abandoned mill and the crooked oak line that looked almost human in the dark. I parked a few yards from the gate and killed the headlights. My watch said 11:40 p.m. It had been 12 years since Lucia's funeral. 12 years of silence, questions no one wanted to answer, and my parents' favorite phrase whenever I brought her up. Let it rest, Marin. She's at peace. But tonight, peace was the last thing I felt. The gravel crunched under my boots as I walked toward her headstone. I could have found it blindfolded. It was the only one with a small ceramic angel cracked down the middle. I used to fix it with glue every year, but after a while I stopped coming. You tell yourself time heals, but it just teaches you how to look away. When I reached the grave, I froze. The soil looked wrong, too soft, too fresh. Someone had disturbed it recently. My pulse started that uneven rhythm it gets when something's about to go bad. Headlights cut through the fog. I ducked behind a cluster of oak trees, my breath fogging up the cold air. A silver sedan rolled in slow, like it didn't belong here either. When the doors opened, my parents stepped out. Even in the dim light, I could see how different they moved now. Older, slower, but still in sync. Mom held something in her arms, a small wooden box wrapped in a white cloth. Dad carried a small shovel. They didn't speak. The only sound was the scrape of metal against dirt as he dug a shallow hole at the base of Lucia's headstone. Mom knelt, brushing her fingers along the stone like it was skin. She'll stay pure this way, she whispered. I didn't know what that meant, but the words sank into me like cold water. They stayed a few minutes longer, then got back in the car. No goodbye, no prayer. Just gone. I waited until the taillights vanished before I stepped out. My knees felt weak, but I forced them to move. The ground was uneven, damp with dew. The smell of turned soil filled the air. What are you hiding now, Dad? I muttered. The moonlight hit the ground just right, revealing the brass latch on the box they'd buried. My hands trembled, not from cold, but from something deeper, something like betrayal I hadn't named yet. I crouched and started to dig. The earth gave easily, like it hadn't settled. My fingers brushed wood. Then I heard it, so faint I almost thought it was in my head. A soft tap, rhythmic. Once, twice. Pause. Again. I stopped breathing. Every instinct I had screamed at me to walk away, but something heavier, memory, guilt, maybe love, kept me there. I dug faster until the box came loose. I dragged it out, my heart hammering so loud I barely noticed the sound had stopped. For a long second, I just stared at it. The latch was smeared with dirt. I unhooked it and lifted the lid. Inside, wrapped in that same white cloth, was a bracelet made of colored thread. I knew it instantly, Lucia's bracelet. She made it for me when she was 16, said it would keep me from turning boring like Dad. I wore it for years until it broke. She'd laughed and told me I was free now. Under the bracelet was an envelope. My name, written in her handwriting, Marin. My throat went dry. I couldn't move for a moment. All these years I thought grief meant silence, but silence was their disguise. The moonlight hit the bracelet, making the threads shimmer like they were alive. I slipped the envelope into my jacket pocket but left the box open. Something about closing it felt wrong, like shutting her away again. I looked toward the road, the direction my parents had gone. The night swallowed everything except the hum of crickets and the rustle of dry leaves. 12 years of pretending, and now this. My fingers brushed the edge of the envelope. My pulse steadied, not calm, but clear. Whatever was inside, I was done being the quiet son. If you wanted me to find this, I whispered, you just made your biggest mistake. I turned toward my truck, the weight of the envelope heavy against my chest. The envelope was still damp when I set it on my desk the next morning. I hadn't slept. I'd driven home on autopilot, pulled into my driveway just before midnight, and stared at that letter until the sun started to rise. Now, at 6:30, the blinds in my office sliced soft beams of morning light across the hardwood floor. Dust floated through the still air. My coffee sat untouched. I tore the seal slowly, afraid the words inside might change everything I thought I knew. Inside was a piece of folded stationery, the paper yellowed slightly at the edges. My name was written on the front in a looping, familiar script, Lucia's handwriting. No doubt. My fingers trembled as I opened it. If you're reading this, it means they finally let me go. I'm sorry I couldn't fight harder, Marin. But promise me, don't believe what they tell you about me. My throat tightened. I gripped the edge of the desk with my free hand to steady myself. Her voice. I could hear it in my head, clear, playful, stubborn. I hadn't heard it in over a decade, but it was still there. I read on. They said it was for the family's reputation, that I'd ruined everything, but I wasn't the one who brought shame. I only wanted to love who I loved. I stopped. That line, who I loved. A flood of images came back. Lucia, 17, laughing by the lake at our grandparents' property. And Caleb, the gardener's son. Dark-haired, quick with a joke, never cared that we came from money. I remembered the day Dad found them behind the tool shed. His face had turned to stone. If that boy ever steps foot here again, I'll make him disappear. Lucia vanished 2 weeks later. They told me she died in her sleep from a rare heart defect. No warning, no second opinions, no open casket. Just a funeral I wasn't allowed to help plan and a sealed box in the ground. Now holding this letter, nothing made sense. I scanned the rest quickly, my heart racing like I was being chased. They kept me away. They said I was confused, sick. I wasn't. I was scared. But not of Caleb. I was scared of them. If you ever find the truth, don't let him see you coming. Him. I didn't need to ask who him was. 12 years of silence. And I'd swallowed every word they fed me, defended them, repeated their lies to anyone who asked. I folded the letter slowly, then opened it again, staring at that last line. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't hurt. I was. But the pain twisted into something sharper, something solid, anger. I slipped the letter into a file, locked it in my drawer, and left the house. I didn't tell anyone where I was going. I parked across from my parents' house, the same one I grew up in, and watched from the safety of my tinted windows. Dad sat at the dining table, coffee in one hand, newspaper in the other, like it was any other Tuesday. No guilt. No trace of what he'd done the night before. "You're not the man I thought you were," I whispered. I snapped a picture of the letter with my phone, backed it up to 2 different drives, and drove to my office downtown. Inside the vault, I placed the original letter inside a fireproof folder and locked it away. Then I started digging. Lucia's school records, hospital visits, property transfers, anything dated near the time she died. It didn't take long to spot the gaps. No death certificate under her name, no burial permit filed in Chatham County. But there was something else, a land deed signed over to my father 6 months after Lucia's supposed passing. A cabin, upstate, rural, remote, no phone line. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the document like it might give me a reason. The phone rang. I let it buzz once, twice. Then I saw the name. Mom. I picked up. "You shouldn't have gone there last night," she said. Her voice trembled. "You knew I was there? You've always been curious, Marin. But some things a son shouldn't dig up." There was a clink in the background. Porcelain. Then a low murmur. I knew that voice too well. "Dad's with you, isn't he?" Silence. Then his voice came through, measured, calculated. "Son, you're chasing ghosts. Let your sister rest." I didn't respond. I just ended the call. They were scared, not panicked, not out of control, but watching, planning, like always. I took a breath, pulled the letter out again, and read the final line once more. "Don't let him see you coming." I folded it slowly and muttered to myself, "Then I won't." By the time I reached the courthouse archives, I already knew someone had tried to erase her completely. I hadn't gone straight there after the call. I waited 2 days, mostly because I needed to breathe, think, pretend to be working. I told my assistant I was off on a client retreat upstate. I even sent a fake GPS pin from my car. In truth, I was parked outside the old library most of the morning, trying to find the nerve. Savannah's courthouse archives were as dull and lifeless as the stories buried in their drawers. The room was humid, the kind that stuck to your shirt. Rows of steel cabinets hummed faintly with fluorescent lights above. The place smelled like old paper and secrets. I signed in under a different name. Martin Wren. It was sloppy, but I couldn't risk leaving a breadcrumb. A woman at the front desk looked up as I approached. She had graying curls, a cardigan that seemed too heavy for the heat, and reading glasses low on her nose. Her name tag said Helen. "Help you find something?" she asked with a warm, weary smile. "I'm looking for a death certificate," I said, keeping my voice steady. "Lucia Dwyer. Passed away in 2012. She nodded and turned to her monitor, typing slowly. I watched her face as she searched. Something shifted behind her eyes. "I'm sorry, sir. There's no record of that name in our system. Are you sure of the spelling?" "Dwyer, I said clearly. She typed it again. Still nothing. "That's strange," she murmured. "There should at least be a record number, even if it's sealed." My chest tightened. "What about hospital records from 2012? Maybe under county documentation?" She shook her head. "You'd need a court order for that, I'm afraid." I forced a smile and thanked her, trying not to show how badly my hands were starting to shake. Then, just as I turned to leave, Helen squinted at her screen again. "Wait, there's a partial match under a different name." I stopped. "Different how?" She leaned closer to the screen. "Lucia D. Wren. That ring any bells?" "Wren, my pseudonym. My lie. Suddenly not mine." She clicked a few times, then looked over her shoulder. "I probably shouldn't, but—" She slipped a printout from the tray and held it out to me discreetly. "Be careful, Mr. Dwyer." I froze. "You knew?" She looked back at her monitor and didn't answer. I walked out, holding the printout like it was made of glass. Inside my car, I locked the doors, turned the AC to full blast, and read every word. Lucia D. Wren status. Deceased location. Red Fern Institute. Transferred. Disposition. Private facility. Record sealed. No date of death. No cause listed. Just that word. Transferred. Not buried. Transferred. My palms were sweating. I stared at the paper and whispered aloud. Transferred. To where? The last time I saw her alive, she was standing in the kitchen barefoot, arguing with Dad about something I couldn't hear. I was 17. They sent me to football camp the next day. When I came home, her room was empty. A week later, they said she was gone. That night at dinner, Mom's hands shook too much to hold her fork. Dad was silent, and I believed them. I nodded when they said she passed peacefully, like a fool. I looked at the document again. Red Fern Institute. The name sent a chill down my spine. A quick search pulled up almost nothing. The facility had shut down years ago. No public website. A few scattered blog posts, a legal brief buried in an archive, and an article calling it a private correctional center for behavioral rehabilitation. Behavioral. They treated love like a disease. One article described forced therapy sessions. Another hinted at physical restraint and isolation. It sounded more like a prison than a clinic. Lucia's sin had been Caleb, the boy who wasn't our kind, and they locked her away for it. I found a number connected to the old facility, redirected now to a new one, Hollow Brook Wellness Center. I dialed, trying to control my breathing. The line clicked. "Thank you for calling Hollow Brook Wellness," a calm female voice answered. "How can I help you?" "Yes, hi. I'm looking into historical records from the Red Fern Institute, around 2012. Any patient transfers still accessible?" There was a long pause, then a click. The line went dead. I stared at my phone. Called again. Voicemail. My gut twisted. That night, as I sat in my office, the city humming outside, my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. Local area code. Stop digging. You're not ready for what's left. I stood up too fast, knocking over the chair. Another message. Your sister didn't die, but she's not who you think she was. My skin felt electric. Then came the third. A photo. Blurry. Shot from a distance like through a windshield or a window. A woman, brown hair pulled back, face half turned, but those eyes, I knew them. She stood near a children's playground, hand in hand with a small boy. The timestamp. 1 week ago. I sat down slowly. Everything felt out of place. My breath, my heartbeat, my name. If Lucia was alive, if that really was her, then what the hell were my parents burying? I stared at the photo. She looked older, different, but those eyes hadn't changed. And the boy, his face, even in blur, held something familiar. A shape of cheekbones, a curl of hair that matched old photos of Caleb. My fingers grazed the phone screen. Lucian, I whispered. I'd heard that name once. A slip. My mother, in the kitchen, humming a tune under her breath. I asked what it was, and she said, something Lucia made up for her son. Then she brushed it off like nothing. I thought she was grieving. Now, I wasn't sure what she was doing at all. I turned back to my laptop, opened search engines, maps, archives. Surveillance photo filters, enough of their lies. I slammed the laptop shut and stood. I'm done playing their game. The road to Brunswick was quiet, save for the steady hum of the tires and the churn in my gut. I hadn't eaten since yesterday morning. Coffee sat untouched in the cup holder, gone cold hours ago. The photograph lay on the passenger seat, crumpled at the edges from how often I'd clutched it. It was nearing 5 when I turned onto the oak-lined street. Spanish moss swayed lazily in the breeze, casting long shadows on the pavement. The address matched the one I'd traced from a mail forwarding record linked to Lucia's old social security number. But the name on the mailbox was L. Wren. I parked a few houses down, heart beating through my ribs. Across the street, a woman stepped onto the porch with a small boy tugging at her arm. She crouched to tie his shoe, laughing softly when he squirmed. It wasn't just her laugh. It was the way she flicked her hair behind her ear, the same way Lucia always did when she was nervous. I stepped out of the car without realizing it. My legs carried me forward until I stood frozen at the curb. She turned to glance toward the street. Our eyes met, and nothing. Not a flicker of recognition. Just a polite, distant glance before she turned back to the boy. I followed them, at a distance, as they walked to a nearby grocery store. I stayed behind 2 aisles, pretending to study canned beans while trying to calm my breathing. She was filling a small basket with juice, peanut butter, bread. The boy stayed close to her side. I approached carefully. My voice cracked when I spoke. Excuse me, are you Lucia? She turned slowly. Her smile was tight, almost rehearsed. I'm sorry, you must have me confused with someone else. My name's Lila. She turned, gently took the boy's hand, and walked briskly away, leaving her basket behind. I caught up with her in the parking lot. Please, just one question. Why do you have my sister's bracelet? She stopped, hand on the car door. For a moment, the mask slipped. Her shoulders stiffened. Her wrist, barely visible beneath her sweater sleeve, glinted in the late sun. The bracelet, the same one that had been buried in that box. You shouldn't have come here, she whispered, eyes darting past me. Then she shoved the boy into the car, climbed in, and peeled out of the lot, tires screeching on the asphalt. I stood there, motionless, as the dust settled around me. Back at the motel, I locked the door and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the photo. I zoomed in. The boy's backpack had a tag, L. Wren Jr. Wren, her new last name. His too. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Now you've seen her. Don't make the same mistake she did. I typed back, fingers trembling. Who are you? No reply. A moment later, another message arrived. This time, a photo, taken from the street, my house, my own house, lights off, curtains drawn. Caption, you're next. The motel walls felt like they were closing in. I pulled the curtains shut, bolted the door, and checked the parking lot twice. The photo was recent. I recognized the trash bins I'd forgotten to pull in. I called Erin, Lucia's old best friend. She'd moved to Atlanta years ago, but they were once inseparable. She answered on the second ring. Marin, I found her. Silence. You knew, didn't you? I asked. I thought she was dead. Everyone did. Your father made sure of that. My heart dropped. Why? Erin's voice broke. Because she was pregnant, and the baby wasn't supposed to exist. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand for a long time before dropping it on the nightstand. The motel room was quiet except for the occasional hum of cars on the highway. The boy, her son. That's what they buried, a life, a truth, meant to stay hidden. 12 years of silence, of gaslighting, of pretending that grief was all that was left. But I saw her. I heard her voice, felt her fear. And I knew one thing for sure now. They didn't bury Lucia. They buried what she dared to protect. I sat by the window as night fell, watching shadows stretch across the lot. A plan began forming, fragile, desperate, but fueled by something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. If she's alive, I'll find her again. And this time, I won't let them bury the truth. At dawn, I was already packed. I tossed the motel key on the counter and stepped into the chill morning air. The car engine hummed as I pulled onto the road. The sky was streaked with pink and gold. The photograph sat beside me, creased and fading, but it no longer felt like a memory. It felt like a beginning. If they lied once, I muttered, gripping the wheel tighter, they'll lie again. But not to me. By the time I reached Savannah again, the storm clouds had gathered like bruises across the sky. The rain came soft at first, then heavier, as if the world itself wanted to wash something clean. I parked across from my parents' house, the same one I'd spent my childhood in, the same one that never truly felt like home. The place looked smaller now, older. Its windows were dark, curtains drawn tight. The porch light flickered once and went out. I sat there gripping the steering wheel, watching raindrops slide down the windshield. The air was thick, heavy with that humid Georgia stillness before something breaks. When I finally stepped out, my shoes splashed into shallow puddles. The gate creaked open like it hadn't been used in years. The front door, it wasn't even locked. It hung slightly ajar. When I walked into my parents' house, I expected denial, I said softly to myself. What I found instead was destruction. Drawers had been pulled out and dumped across the floor, papers scattered like snow. The family portrait that used to hang in the hallway was gone, leaving a clean rectangle on the wallpaper where the frame had shielded it from the sun. "Mom?" I called. "Dad?" Only the faint tick of the grandfather clock answered me. The air smelled faintly of smoke. When I stepped into the study, I saw why. Black streaks stained the carpet near the desk. The safe under it had been pried open, its contents gone. But on the desk lay a single photograph. My mother, much younger, holding baby Lucia. I picked it up carefully. Behind it was a folded note scrawled in my father's handwriting. "If you're reading this," it said, "it's too late to save her." My pulse kicked hard. I turned the paper over. On the back, a printed address, Hollowbrook Wellness Center, private entry, North Wing, the same place that replaced Red Fern. I shoved the note in my pocket and ran upstairs. Every step creaked under my weight. The smell of smoke and dust thickened as I climbed. The master bedroom looked like a storm had passed through. Drawers overturned, mattress slashed open, clothes strewn everywhere. And there, in the corner, a small fireproof box, unlocked. Inside were papers, old, yellowed, but legible. Lucia's name on the header. Diagnosis, postpartum psychosis. Patient exhibits violent tendencies. Date, 2 weeks after her supposed death. I sank to my knees, the page trembling in my hand. "They institutionalized her," I whispered, "after she gave birth." My breath caught in my chest. All these years, every memory, every lie, came crashing down like broken glass. They hadn't buried her. They buried their shame. I stared at the report, then at the empty space where the family photo used to hang on the wall. "You didn't protect her," I murmured. "You erased her." A sound behind me made me freeze. A floorboard creaked near the doorway. When I turned, she was there. My mother. Beatrice stood in the frame, her raincoat soaked through, hair plastered to her face. Her hands shook. She looked like a ghost, fragile and hollow-eyed. "You shouldn't be here, Marin," she said quietly. I stood. "Where is she?" She didn't move. "We did what we had to," she said, voice trembling. "You don't understand what she became." I slammed the report down on the dresser. "What she became? She was your daughter." Tears welled in her eyes. "You think I wanted this? Your father? He said it was the only way to keep the family safe. And you believed him?" I shot back. Her voice cracked. "He said she hurt the baby." I stopped cold. "The baby?" Beatrice froze, realizing she'd said too much. Her hand went to her mouth. "She tried to take him away," she whispered. "Your father stopped her. He said she wasn't stable, that she'd endanger the child." He sent her back. I felt heat rise in my chest, anger cutting through grief like lightning. "You sent her to that place. You let him do this." "I didn't know Marin," she cried. "He told me she died there. I never saw her body." I stared at her, really looked at her. The trembling hands, the hollow guilt behind her eyes. My voice softened, not from forgiveness, but exhaustion. "You didn't just lose your daughter, Mom. You lost your soul protecting him." I turned toward the door. She reached out and grabbed my arm. Her grip was weak, desperate. "Please, Marin, stop. You don't know who your father really is." I met her gaze, steady. "No, Mom," I said. "He's exactly who I think he is." I pulled free and walked out. Rain pounded harder now, soaking through my shirt as I stepped onto the porch. The note with Hollowbrook's address was clenched tight in my fist. Behind me, through the storm, I heard her faint voice, almost a whisper carried on the wind. "He'll find you before you find her." I didn't look back. I started the car, the wipers slapping rhythmically against the windshield. The house faded behind me, swallowed by rain and memory. Whatever came next, I knew one thing. There was no going back. The highway stretched for miles, a ribbon of gray vanishing into the fog. Pine trees leaned over both sides like they were watching, whispering secrets I wasn't meant to hear. I followed the GPS coordinates from the note clutched in my pocket, turning off the main road and onto a narrow gravel path that wound deeper into the woods. The sign appeared suddenly through the mist, faded letters on rusted metal. Hollowbrook Wellness Center. The smaller plaque beneath it read, "Private Rehabilitation Wing. Authorized personnel only." The gates were open, swinging gently in the wind. The closer I got, the heavier the fog became, like the road itself didn't want me to arrive. I parked, engine still running, and stepped out with a flashlight. The air smelled of wet leaves and old rot. Somewhere in the distance, a crow called out, its cry swallowed by the fog. The facility loomed ahead, 3 stories of crumbling concrete and shattered windows. Ivy crawled up the walls, wrapping around faded words I could barely read. A faint light flickered behind one of the windows in the north wing. I moved toward it, gravel crunching under my boots. The front doors were chained shut, so I circled around to a side entrance marked North Wing, Private Access. The door groaned when I pushed it open. The stench of mildew and neglect hit me instantly. Inside, the hallways were lined with old patient files, some spilled across the floor. Chairs overturned, glass broken, the echoes of a place long abandoned. My flashlight beam passed over a wall plastered with hundreds of patient photos, all faded, yellowing, each labeled neatly beneath with names and admission dates. I scanned row after row until one name froze me in place. Lucia D. Wren, admitted February 2012. Status, transferred. I reached out and touched the photograph. Her eyes stared back at me, wide, uncertain, trapped. I swallowed hard and pressed on, deeper into the building. The smell of damp paper grew stronger. I found a small records room tucked behind a broken glass door. Inside, one metal cabinet remained upright, its drawer marked transferred cases. My hands shook as I pulled it open. There it was, her file. Inside was a release form stamped, "Authorized by Russell Dwyer." "He took her out himself," I whispered. The final note, dated 3 months later, read, "Patient deceased, burial arranged privately. No attending doctor, no witness signature, just his initials, RD." My pulse thundered. Every breath felt like it scraped my throat raw. I took photos of every page with my phone, one after another. Then, a sound. A door creaked somewhere down the hall. I froze, holding my breath. A light, faint, flickering, cut through the darkness. Then a voice, calm, steady, the one I had feared hearing again. "You just couldn't leave it alone, could you?" My flashlight trembled in my hand. I turned slowly. My father stepped out from the shadows, rain dripping from his coat, his old hat pulled low. He looked almost unchanged, except for the eyes, cold, resolved. "You always thought you were smarter than me," he said, "but you don't understand the weight of this family's name." My voice broke through the silence. "You killed her." He tilted his head, a faint smirk forming. "Killed? No. I saved what was left of her, before she destroyed everything." "You locked her away." "She begged me to, Marin. You don't know what she did." "Then tell me." He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "She tried to take that boy and run. Said he wasn't mine." The air left my lungs. "What are you saying?" "That boy, the one she had, but she was never a Dwyer." I stumbled back, the walls closing in around me. "You're lying." He sighed, almost tired. "You have no idea how deep this goes." Before I could speak, he reached inside his coat and pulled out a revolver. "I can't let you ruin us like she did." I raised my hand slowly. "You'd kill your own son now?" He met my eyes without flinching. "If that's what it takes to protect the family name." A noise echoed outside, the slam of a car door. His head turned instinctively. That was my moment. I lunged forward, grabbing for the gun. His finger jerked on the trigger. The shot shattered a window, the sound exploding down the hall. The gun flew from his hand. He stumbled backward, hitting his head against a metal cabinet before collapsing. I stood there, chest heaving, the smell of gunpowder thick in the air. He lay still, groaning faintly. I picked up the gun and stared down at him. "You'd rather kill the living than face what you did to the dead." Outside, sirens wailed faintly. Distant, but getting closer. Someone must have heard. I backed toward the exit, still shaking. I took Lucia's file from the cabinet and ran, slipping on the wet concrete as I made my way back to the car. When I reached the gate, I stopped dead. Headlights flared through the fog. A dark sedan blocked the road. The driver's door opened. A silhouette stepped out. The beam of the headlights caught her face, the woman from Brunswick. Her voice trembled but carried clearly through the rain. "Marin, get in. Now." I didn't move. For a second, I couldn't breathe. "Lucia." Her eyes met mine. Tired, alive, haunted. "Please," she said, glancing toward the facility behind me. "There's no time." I ran to the passenger side and slid in, heart hammering. The tires screeched as she pulled onto the highway, the fog swallowing the building behind us. The wipers beat furiously against the windshield, cutting arcs through the rain. For the first few miles, neither of us spoke. Only the sound of the engine and the relentless patter of rain filled the space between us. I could barely breathe. The gun rested on the console between us, a silent threat neither of us dared touch. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "You're shaking." "When you said my name back there," I murmured. It was like 12 years of silence collapsed into one heartbeat. She glanced at me, her face pale and older, etched with the kind of sorrow that doesn't fade. "You're alive," I said softly. "Barely." My throat tightened. "They said you died." Lucia's knuckles whitened around the steering wheel. "He made it look that way. Paid off the doctors, forged the papers, said it was the only way to protect the family name." "Protect it from what?" She hesitated, jaw tightening. "From me, and from what I carried." The words hung heavy in the air, the headlights ahead blurred in the rain. My mind spun, grasping at fragments of memories, her sudden disappearance, our mother's trembling silence, my father's warnings to let the past rest. Lucia turned off onto a deserted rest stop and killed the engine. The rain softened to a steady whisper. She didn't look at me when she spoke. "That boy you saw, his name is Leo." I nodded slowly. "Your son." Her voice broke. "Your nephew. And your brother." For a moment, I couldn't process it. "What are you talking about?" She turned toward me. tears brimming in her eyes. Dad isn't Leo's father. He's yours. The world tilted. My breath caught, the air thick as mud in my lungs. Lucia, no. It happened when I was 17, she whispered. He told me it was love, that no one would understand. When I told Mom, she tried to end her life. He locked me away to keep the secret buried. I pressed a hand to my mouth, shaking my head. He told everyone you were unstable, that you hurt the baby. Lucia's voice trembled. He hurt me. Then he made me the monster. We sat in silence for what felt like hours. Rain drummed softly against the roof. Finally, I whispered, "That's why you ran." She nodded, staring out the window. I escaped 3 years ago, changed my name, built a life for Leo. But someone always found me. He's been watching both of us, Marin. You think you found me, but he let you. I turned toward her, my heart pounding. You think he wanted me to come here? She nodded once. He's always 2 steps ahead. As if on cue, headlights appeared behind us. Faint at first, then closer, steady, deliberate. Lucia's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Don't look back, she said. Just hold on. But I looked anyway. Through the rain-smeared glass, a black sedan trailed us, its headlights glaring like eyes. My father's car. He's alive, I breathed. I saw him fall. I saw him hit the floor. Lucia's voice was tight with fear. You think that would stop him? The sedan swerved closer, its headlights flashing twice, a signal. Then again, Lucia floored the accelerator. The engine roared. The car fishtailed on the wet asphalt before catching traction. The chase blurred, trees rushing past, shadows flashing. My heart hammered against my ribs. He's not trying to run us off, Lucia shouted over the noise. He's hurting us. The road narrowed, twisting. Ahead loomed a sharp curve and the glint of a broken guardrail. Lucia, I yelled. She slammed the brakes. The car skidded sideways, screeching to a stop inches from the edge. For a second, everything was silent except our ragged breathing. Then his car stopped behind us, headlights slicing through the mist. The door opened. Russell stepped out, his coat soaked, blood seeping through the sleeve of his shirt. His face was pale, but his eyes were alive, hard and burning. He stood under the rain like a figure carved from stone. You think you can run from blood? He shouted. You are the shame in my veins. I stepped out, shaking but resolute. The air crackled between us. You destroyed this family for your pride, I said. You buried the truth because you couldn't live with what you did. He raised the revolver, hands steady despite the wound. You think you know the truth? You're standing because I let you live long enough to find it. Lucia's voice broke behind me. He's not your son, she screamed. He's your mirror. Lightning tore through the clouds, illuminating all 3 of us. The gun went off. The shot echoed across the ravine, but I was already moving. The bullet struck the ground beside me, spraying dirt and rainwater. I lunged forward. Lucia rushed from behind, shoving Russell with all her strength. The revolver slipped from his hand, spinning across the road. He stumbled, lost his footing, and fell backward over the broken guardrail. We both froze, staring into the darkness below. The sound of rain filled the silence. No scream, no thud, just emptiness. Lucia collapsed against me, sobbing into my chest. He's gone, she whispered. I looked over the edge. The fog swirled below, deep, endless. He's gone, I repeated softly. But even as I said it, a chill crawled down my spine. Because somewhere in the distance, I could still feel his presence. Like the air itself remembered his breath. Then why, I whispered, does it still feel like he's here? I stood at the edge of that ravine long after Lucia's breathing had calmed in my arms. The rain had softened to a mist, but the question still echoed through my bones. Why does it still feel like he's here? 2 days later, I found myself staring at the ceiling of a hospital room, sterile white with a faint odor of antiseptic and something older. Grief, maybe. My left arm was wrapped in gauze from wrist to elbow. A deep bruise bloomed across my ribs. The window pane was streaked with rain again, like time hadn't moved since that night. Lucia was just 1 room over. I hadn't seen her yet. Two officers stood in the hallway, polite but clearly stationed. When the police asked what happened on that cliff, I told them the truth, or the version of it I could live with. I didn't lie. I just didn't explain every part. Some truths don't belong to words. The rhythmic beeping of the monitor beside me kept time like a slow, guilty metronome. I watched the IV drip tick its way into my vein, drop by drop, like punishment for surviving. Detective Harris walked in without knocking. Mid-50s, pressed slacks, a voice that didn't need to shout to be heard. He held a manila folder, rainwater beating off his coat. "Mr. Dwyer," he began, "we sent divers down the ravine. We've covered about 3 miles downstream so far." I didn't look at him. "You didn't find him?" He paused. "No, sir. The current was fast that night, heavy rainfall. We believe, well, if he was alive, he's long gone. If not, maybe that's for the best," I cut in. My voice didn't shake. I was done shaking. He approached the bed and held out the folder. "There's something else. We recovered a box from the trunk of your father's car. Thought you might want to see it." I hesitated before reaching for it with my good arm. The box was small, dark walnut, water-warped, but intact. I flipped the latch open slowly. Inside, a photo of us. The Dwyer family, smiling on a beach I barely remembered. I must have been 10. Lucia looked 17, wearing a red scarf. Our father had his arms around both of us. Beneath the photo was a baby bracelet, tiny pink thread. The tag read, "Leo." And a folded slip of paper, edges curled from moisture. I opened it carefully. "For whoever survives me." I loved her, in my own broken way. What I did cannot be undone. The river will keep my secrets. R.D. I stared at the note until my eyes blurred. The fury that used to burn so bright had cooled, not into peace, into ash. Hours later, I walked into Lucia's room. She was awake, propped up against the pillows, eyes fixed on the rain sliding down the window. She didn't turn when I stepped in. "They didn't find him," I said quietly. "I know." I placed the box on her bedside table. She looked at it, then reached for the bracelet. Her fingers trembled. "He finally said it," she murmured. Too late for anyone it mattered to. I thought seeing his confession would help. She shook her head. "Some truths don't need validation. I lived them." I sat beside her. The silence was different now. Not avoidance, not tension, just space. "What happens next?" I asked. Lucia turned to me. "You go back, build something, break the cycle." "And you?" She gave a tired smile. "I'll face what I have to. I'm done running." That afternoon, the police released a statement. "Russell Dwyer, missing, presumed dead. Investigation ongoing." The press had a field day. Headlines bloomed across the internet. "Savannah Scandal, The Architect's Secret, Dwyer Dynasty Crumbles." I ignored every call, deleted every message. I wasn't their story to sell. Before leaving the hospital, I stopped by Lucia's room one last time. We didn't need many words. "Don't carry his guilt," she said, squeezing my hand. "It doesn't belong to you." I looked her in the eye. "It belonged to all of us. But maybe I'm the first one willing to drop it." She smiled, faint but genuine. "That's what freedom looks like." We hugged. The kind of hug that doesn't fix the past, but lets it breathe. A few days later, I drove out of Savannah, heading north along the old back roads. It was late evening by the time I reached the river bridge, the same bridge my parents used to walk on Sundays, the same one that haunted my dreams now. I stepped out holding the box. The night was calm, moonlight glittering on the water. No wind, no cars, just me, the river, and everything it carried. I opened the box, looked at the photo one last time, then let it slip from my hand. It floated a moment, spinning gently, before the current took it. "I forgive you," I whispered, "but I won't forget." The water swallowed it whole. As I turned to walk back to my car, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but I did. "Uncle Marin?" a small voice whispered. I froze. "Who is this?" "It's Leo. Mommy said you'd find us someday." Click. The line went dead, but the echo of his voice clung to me like mist on the skin. I stood there on that bridge long after the world went quiet again, my phone still in my hand, Leo's whisper playing over and over in my mind. Back at the rental house outside Atlanta, the walls felt thinner than ever. 2 weeks had passed since the river, and the silence inside those rooms was loud in all the wrong ways. I tried getting back to life, if you could call that pile of unpaid bills and unopened mail life. That evening, as dusk pulled its weight across the sky and the cicadas began their slow symphony, I sat at the kitchen table, sorting through paper that didn't matter. Then I found it. No return address, just my name, block letters, uneven, like they'd been written with effort, a child's effort. My fingers tightened before they moved. I tore it open slowly, heart thudding. Inside was a drawing. Crayon strokes, a house, a river, 3 stick figures holding hands. One tall, one shorter with long hair and a child between them. Bright yellow sun in the corner, blue scribbles for water. At the bottom, come find us. Leo. My throat closed. On the back of the paper, scrawled in shaky pencil, was an address in rural Tennessee. I didn't even pack a bag. By midnight, I was on the road, headlights carving into fog, the hum of tires filling the silence I didn't dare break. Every curve of the road brought memories. Lucia's whisper, Russell's eyes, the feeling of the revolver shaking in my hand. Just before dawn, gravel crunched beneath the wheels as I pulled up to a small farmhouse. Paint peeled from its siding, fence half fallen. But something about it, the smoke from the chimney, the light in one window, felt alive. Then the front door opened. Lucia stepped out, hair shorter now, a little more color in her cheeks. Her eyes met mine, tired, wary, but clearer than I'd seen in years. She wore a soft blue sweater, and beside her stood a boy, no older than 10, holding a toy boat. "You got my letter," she said. I nodded, my voice caught before it could form words. The boy stepped forward, staring straight at me. "You must be Leo," I said. He gave a small nod. "Mom says you're my uncle, but—" He tilted his head. "You look like me." Lucia's face didn't change, but her fingers clenched the porch railing. "He deserves to know," she said softly. "Someday." "Someday," I agreed, eyes still on the boy. We spent the morning like any ordinary family, if ordinary meant strangers trying to stitch something broken. Leo talked about school, asked if I liked pancakes, showed me a scar on his knee he got chasing a goat, and for a moment the past felt like it had loosened its grip. Then a truck passed by, black, old, dust-coated, the kind of truck that didn't just drive by. It slowed near the edge of the property. The driver never turned his head, but I felt it. The stare. My stomach turned. That night I couldn't sleep. The house creaked like it was remembering something. I stood at the window, watching the toy boat Leo had left in a barrel near the porch. It spun slowly in the water, not drifting, turning over and over, just like that box had in the river. Something pulled me outside. Barefoot, I stepped into the mud. The air smelled of damp earth and something older. Then I heard it. "You can't bury blood." I froze. No one was there, only trees and shadows. I stepped toward the porch and found the prints, large, fresh, and deep, mud tracked beneath the boards, a size I knew too well. Farther out, near the fence, faint tire marks curved toward the woods. Back inside, Lucia sat at the table. In front of her was the same box I'd thrown into the river. "Leo found it by the creek this morning," she said without looking up. My breath caught. Water stains marked the wood, but the lid was intact. Inside, the photo, the bracelet, but the note, the confession, was gone. "The river gave it back," I whispered. Lucia looked at me. "Maybe it was never meant to keep his secrets." I nodded slowly. "Then maybe it's time we stopped keeping them, too." The next morning, the sun finally broke through the clouds. At the creek's edge, Leo stood beside me, holding the box. I knelt and handed him a folded piece of paper. "Write something," I told him. "Anything you want to let go of." He scribbled a few words, didn't show me, folded it carefully, placed it in the box. Together, we let it go. The current caught it gently, spinning it once before carrying it downstream. The sunlight made the water shimmer like glass. I whispered, "This time, let the river keep it." Lucia stepped beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder. "He'll grow up free, Marin." "And you?" I asked. "Freedom's a slow thing," she said, "but it's coming." I watched the box vanish around a bend. "Sometimes I think he's still out there," I murmured, "watching." Lucia nodded. "Maybe, but now he can't hurt us anymore." We turned back toward the house. Leo's laughter floated across the field, bright, full, alive. Behind us, the river kept flowing, quiet, steady, unforgiving. Some ghosts haunt to punish, others haunt to remind you survived.